Hey, so get this. John and I somehow ended up in a headline that reads like premium clickbait about the fan council for Major League Baseball. We're on that council. We lived it. And today we're giving you the inside story minus the misinformation.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and the #1 sports podcast network in all the land. Now, The Athletic's Evan Drellich wrote about the MLB Fan Council that John and I are a part of, and the headline implies that we're being manipulated by the ownership side. So we're going to give you a behind-the-scenes look to tell you our personal experiences and why the headline and the response to the article is unfounded. Plus, MLB actually agrees with my brother John about a solution to all of it. What is the solution? We'll get to that in just a moment. Before we do, we want to thank our sponsor, Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase.
Happy Friday to you, and thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, there's a lot going on in Locked On world. In fact, every dayers, mark your calendar for Monday, December 8th. We've got an exciting announcement you won't want to miss, so stay tuned. On today's show, of course, we're talking about what Mike just said, that there was a very interesting article that came out Tuesday, and we felt like we needed to address it, didn't we, Mike?
Yeah, so let me reset the conversation here. Evan Drellich of The Athletic released an article on Tuesday that caught a lot of baseball fans' eyes across social media, and the article was about the MLB Fan Council that John and I were on. So MLB formed a fan council, and this is what Evan Drellich wrote. It wasn't long before the league made its pitch on labor issues. Now, while the article, it described the experiences and firsthand comments from other members of the council, we live in a world where only the headlines get people's attention, right? And people either don't read the article or, here's the reality, don't want to pay The Athletic to read the article.
Right.
Or maybe they just can't read. No, maybe they can read, but they don't want to read that article in particular. John, here's our problem with that article title and the response that it's generated. We've been a part of the Fan Council since the beginning. They reached out to us and asked us to be a part of it, and we felt honored to be a part of it, said yes. We were asked to participate back in March. We've had monthly Zoom meetings. It felt like COVID for a little bit. We had monthly Zoom meetings with the same 3 executives at MLB and some players, some team leads, etc. Our very first conversation, it was about torpedo bats.
Yeah.
Something that was a hot topic at the time because that came up. People were hitting home runs and what is this? And so they actually addressed that on the first council. Since then, we've discussed how the MLB validates memorabilia. We've discussed umpires. We've discussed the strike zone. We discussed the challenge system. And we even shared with you that it was coming before they announced that it was coming for 2026. By the way, we are confident that the challenge system is going to be great based off of what we heard. And we shared with you that it's going to be implemented and it's going to be fantastic. So that's what we're excited about for 2026. We didn't discuss anything regarding payroll, salary caps, or salary floors until November.
Right.
And even then, it was something that we, talking about us on the Fan Council, that we wanted to discuss. We brought it up. And so all the topics that have been brought up have been at the request of us, the Fan Council, except for maybe the first topic on the torpedo bats because we were just getting started.
Right, exactly. The word salary cap, salary floor, that hadn't even come up in the discussion. So, Mike, going back to the original headline of it wasn't long until the league made its pitch. Well, the truth is they didn't make a pitch, and we'd been meeting with them from, I think, May until November. So it wasn't a matter of like, this wasn't the first and only conversation that we've had as a fan council. So what was the pitch presentation that Drellich is alluding to MLB giving us? So let me be clear again. It wasn't about salary cap, salary floor, anything like that. It was a really well done slideshow presenting team spending throughout the league. In fact, it was the last 25 years or so on how teams have performed in Major League Baseball, and they compared it to other markets in other leagues. Let me give you a little, I'll pull the curtain back a little bit. Here's some of the info they shared with us. Mike, from 1998 to 2024, the top 5 teams in payroll averaged about 89 wins. In 2025, the top 5 teams in payroll averaged 92 wins. From 98 to 2024, teams in the bottom 5 of spending had a separation of about 15 wins from the top payroll teams. So top 5 averaged 89, the bottom 5 averaged about 74 wins. Then in 2025, there was a 20-win disparity between the top 5 payrolls and the bottom 5 payrolls. Listen to this. The top 15 spending teams are shown to be 9 times more likely to win the World Series than the bottom 15. Again, this is what they presented us. These are just the facts of the matter. Another part of the presentation was to look at how other leagues and how other teams spend money. For example, the Oklahoma City Thunder, OKC, they were able to re-sign their core players. And Oklahoma is a very small market team in the NBA, and it's not even a viable market for MLB. So talk about small market. Now, comparably, a small market team like the Guardians had to trade Francisco Lindor to the Mets. He moved from the 29th payroll team to the 3rd payroll team. And then, of course, they compared the Dodgers to the Dallas Cowboys. This was mentioned in the Evan Drellich article. And the reason for that was that these are the 2 of the most nationally recognized teams and brands. They showed the effects of how one team that has to follow the rules of a salary cap, like the Cowboys, influences spending and winning compared to the Dodgers. So let's be clear. One of the takeaways from the presentation was how spending influences winning. But that's not really news, is it, Mike?
No, not at all. It's not news at all. And we requested this. The fan council wanted this. We brought it up and they were like, okay. I mean, there was a whole conversation where we're raising hands talking about different topics. One of the topics was the automated strike zone versus having the challenge system. And they were surprised at how many fans actually wanted the challenge system and thought that it would be a good idea. John and I were both raising our hands. And so they literally were receiving from us, and then they orchestrated what each conversation would be about what we were interested in. Yeah. And what was brought up was we'd love to be able to talk about resources, obviously with the tension of the lockout. Now, they had to be smart about what they did share and what they couldn't share, because there are some information that's private because they have to negotiate some of that stuff. But we brought up those things, and there was, I would say, John, I would say that like 90% of the conversation was very forthright. There was only a couple of times where they were like, we can't get into this because, but overall it was very forthright and no, like, see what we're doing versus what players are doing. And there was none of that in that conversation at all.
And on that point, we talked about like, they made it very clear, hey, this isn't meant to get into like solutions and discussions on like what should be done. So we just want to answer your questions about this information. And so many, many times they reiterated, hey, we're not looking to get into solutions. We're not going to discuss that. And your questions, don't go into solution territory. Let's talk about the information in front of us.
Now, one of the wrinkles that John and I felt was interesting in that conversation was the Angels are usually in top 10 in spending, but they haven't won anything, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
So the numbers maybe are skewed against the Angels for spending. And that was, as fans, we're looking at this and we're going, well, our team's not winning anything. This sucks, right? Yeah. And we were able to say that, not in a disrespectful way, but we were able to say that. But John, when we were in that meeting, I didn't feel like they were pitching us. Did you?
No. And I take issue with the fact that this was some sort of like timeshare presentation, right? That we're getting suckered into something. And and look, I also take issue with the fact that a lot of fan responses have been, oh, they're just trying to get people with followings to be on the side of ownership when the time comes to negotiate the CBA. And what's frustrating to me is like people calling fan council members like rubes or manipulated because they sent us a hat, and you know what I mean? And the truth is, like, everybody who's in these conversations are very smart baseball people.
Yeah. Good questions. Yeah, I felt intimidated by the fan council more than I felt intimidated by the actual MLB people.
Yeah, no kidding. So I take issue with the fact that the members of the fan council aren't able to draw their own conclusions from the presentation. Like we were being fed information in a certain way. So let me tell you what I took away from that meeting. They presented the facts about spending and how it influences who wins in baseball. And the systems that are in place aren't working compared to other sports. More small market teams win more championships more often in other leagues than they do in Major League Baseball. Look at the Chiefs, right? There's Kansas City, small market. During a period where members were like asked to share their concerns, I flat out said, I'm afraid of the way the Angels are spending on a 1-year timeline. And this is before, some of the trades they made and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm afraid of the way they're spending, knowing that there's going to be a potential lockout after 2026. I'm worried that owners like Arte Moreno aren't going to negotiate in good faith because it seems like he's spending just for 2026 and not beyond that. So from my viewpoint, Mike, I think I made it very clear to MLB that I was not on the side of ownership or influenced to feel a certain way about upcoming negotiations. In fact, the CBA and the lockout not even brought up by the MLB representatives. It was us, like we said, who brought it up. And that's what makes this whole discourse like really frustrating. Every step of the way, we've driven the conversations. MLB has asked us what we want to talk about. And then by the next conversation over Zoom, we've gotten into that conversation. So overall, in my opinion, the headline from Evan Drellich and the details of the article, those are the things that feel pointed and influenced in a direction. If anyone's doing anything misleading or trying to push a narrative, I feel like it's this article and Evan Drellich trying to say that, MLB is trying to get fans on the side of ownership. That's not true. It's just not.
Not at all. And based off of what we just shared with you, that's why we feel that way. And even when Jon is sharing what he shared with you, that he shared in that MLB conversation, other fans were nodding along with him. We'd have to unmute and then mute back again. They're nodding along with him. They're agreeing with him. And then those that were on the MLB council that were talking with us were like, hey, thanks for that perspective.
Yep.
We appreciate that. And we hear that. And we know that fans feel that way, not just Angel fans, but all fans. So there was a conversation that took place. I get that if you weren't there, you can draw your own conclusions, but I'll tell you, being on the council, like it felt like, wow, they're really listening to us. They're really concerned about this. They're really taking our word for it. And by the way, we didn't get the hat and the bat and the ball until after it was over.
Right.
And it wasn't beforehand. There was no promise of anything at all. And we were kind of like, what really is this about? And it ended up being, I think, a pretty great thing. And what we bring to you on Locked On Angels is a genuineness, is an honesty. We're fans first, always going to be fans first. And you've heard us talk about Artie, and you've heard us talk about our favorite team, and you've heard us talk about players. What we bring to you on Locked On Angels is what we brought to that fan council and what other fans brought to that fan council. And I got to tell you, Jon's right. Like the response was not manipulative-y. It didn't feel slimy. It didn't feel weird. It felt like they were more honored that we would even say yes. That's honestly what it felt like. Yeah. And in that honoring, I felt like they honored our time by being very straight with us and very truthful with us and very clear with us.
And another part of the conversation here is that there's a whole thread of fan council members that is ongoing beyond these meetings. And so that was out of the article. That wasn't mentioned or anything like that. So we're just here to tell you, from our perspective of actually being there, what these conversations have been like.
Yep.
And if everydayers know us as well as they do, they being on the side of ownership, that's not going to happen here on Locked On Angels.
Especially Jon.
And I can confidently say that that's the sentiment among a lot of the fan council members as well. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, some of the MLB execs actually agreed with me. Where do I sign up? When do I get my job application? Let's go. All right, we'll talk about that. And then tie this all back to our Angels as we continue our conversation. We'll get to all of that coming right up.
as you watch football on Sunday and the action is unfolding and it's moving very, very fast, FanDuel can help you lean in, stay in on all the action. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment, you can live bet with the app open during the game, middle of the game, as the game is coming to an end. Maybe the receiver gets hot and you're like, ooh, wonder if I could win with him. Or maybe there's defense that ends up playing really, really close. You could maybe win some money there. FanDuel has an opportunity to jump in on all of those moments and keep you locked in on every snap, every drive, and every possibility. And if your favorite team's not playing, it'll still cause you to lean in because you might be able to win. And you're a smart fan, so you're going to win. You can get started at FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, the #1 sports podcast network in all the land, as Mike likes to say. And we appreciate you making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. We're talking Angels baseball Monday through Friday with you. And of course, there's lots of conversations to be had. So if you're an Angel fan, you've been a lifelong fan or a new fan, this is the place to be Monday through Friday. Also connect with us on social media at Locked On Angels, at Super Halo Bros, so we can continue the conversation there and get into the YouTube comment section from today's show, because we'd love to hear what you thought of this article and maybe if we could clear some things up for you on today's show.
John, one of the topics you brought up while we were being manipulated on the fan council was your concern about spending. By the way, no Big Brother energy here. When John brought up this question and other things that he brought up at the fan council, I just sat back and I was like, that's my brother right there. Brilliant, smart. I'm just here to look good, and I'm struggling there. But you mentioned how Arte Moreno looks like he's waiting for the lockout to happen. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that's kind of the tension that all Angel fans are feeling. But what did you say that baseball MLB actually agreed with?
I said the luxury tax penalties are outdated, Mike. Mm-hmm. Here's the issue. The current penalties for going up beyond the luxury tax, those were put in place in 2003. And I brought this up to the fan council and they agreed. MLB agreed that the penalties were outdated. Big spending teams, they don't care about busting through the luxury tax because the penalties aren't harsh enough in 2025 in this new era of baseball. Maybe they were harsh in 2003, 22 years ago. Some of our everydayers might not have even been born yet. But, you know, you lose draft picks, you get taxed by a percentage of however you go over the first, second, or the third threshold and how long you've been over the luxury tax. And not to mention, Mike, the qualifying offer, which was meant to compensate small market teams. I mean, they made a whole movie about it, Moneyball, mm-hmm. right? It was small market teams who couldn't hold on to their superstars because they were going to the Yankees and the Red Sox back then. But when you're The problem is that the qualifying offer applies to everybody, even small market teams, right? So when you're printing money like the Yankees do or the Dodgers do, those penalties don't mean very much. And it didn't used to be that way, because I feel like if the players union and MLB want to solve spending issues without a salary cap or a salary floor, they just need to revisit the penalties for the luxury tax, mm-hmm. bring them up to date in 2026, not the same penalties from 2023. Now, there were some changes made in 2022 during the last CBA, but essentially the basic structure of all that kind of remains the same, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Here's kind of the problem. You mentioned it already, but let me reiterate. Qualifying offers apply to everyone, not just the big spenders, but also to small market teams. And right now, teams pay a 20% tax on every dollar spent over the first threshold. And if they stay over that in consecutive years, it goes to 30 and then 40%. A record 9 teams went above the luxury tax in 2023. Good for the teams that should be spending, but it also feels like it doesn't matter to them if they get that luxury tax hit. And then where does the money go? That's always a big conversation. John, where does that money go?
Yeah, the first $3.5 million raised from the luxury tax that teams have to pay into, it goes to funding player benefits. So players new and old. Half the remaining sum is used to contribute to the players union's retirement accounts. The other half of the remaining sum is given to the or is distributed by the commissioner to teams that are small market, but they've grown their like non-television, non-media revenue over multiple years. So essentially, they're trying to incentivize teams to get fans to come to the stadium, spend money on tickets and all of that stuff. And by virtue of that, teams are going to have to increase their payroll, right? Like you want to bring out fans to come see your team. And so you're going to have to spend money to do that. And so that's the hope, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it's working as well as they thought it would in 2026.
Yeah. And then there's the salary cap floor and salary cap overall, right? They've been big topics of discussion, but do the negotiations have to go right to that, or is there another solution? What are your thoughts, Jon?
I mean, I think you have to look at the penalties for the luxury tax and going above and beyond that. That you have to revisit how harsh those are. Now, we all know that like draft picks are involved in that. And in fact, in 2022, what changed with the penalties was, you can't have a top 5 or a top 10 pick. You can't, you get bumped down 10 spots, right? Stuff like that. But also, Mike, I think, and this has come up recently, and I know there's going to be Dodger fans who get in their feelings because they think this is an attack on them. But the truth is that every team can do this and has done it. And it's deferrals. Mm-hmm. Deferrals have led teams to find a way around paying what they ought to be paying in terms of luxury tax penalties by using deferrals. So they're operating within the rules, but again, I think the rules are outdated and they have to revisit that. So again, the present value of Shohei's contract is $460 million, even though he was given a $700 million contract, right? Now, instead of taking a $70 million hit in luxury tax, because the money won't be as valuable in 20 years, it's actually a $46 million luxury tax hit. So smart on the Dodgers to structure a contract that doesn't take them above the luxury tax, because again, they're operating within the rules. Mm-hmm. I just think the rules need to change, to be honest with you. And if they're going to de-incentivize super teams or try to make other teams competitive, they really have to revisit the luxury tax issues.
Yeah, so we got to ask ourselves, what's the goal here? And here's really the goal of these negotiations. More teams ought to be spending is really what we see in baseball, because there's a lot of resource.
That's the sentiment that most, if not all, the members of the fan council, from the Rockies to the Nationals to the Rays, they all want their teams to spend more, and they should be spending more, right?
Yeah. So if that's the case, then incentivize spending, incentivize giving teams an opportunity to benefit from spending. More free agents to get spread around the league. You should increase spending and payroll penalties to match modern baseball. And it lets the players still get paid, but by more than just one team.
Right. Like,
right.
And that's, I think the biggest part of the conversation is, I think when you get into salary cap, you're kind of putting a limit on how much players can earn across the league.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that every team is going to hit the salary cap. But the reason why I'm not quick to jump to a salary cap, and I'm more about like, hey, think about the penalties and the luxury tax issues. For example, let's say Cody Bellinger's a free agent, right? Mm-hmm. If the penalties are harsher for teams going over the luxury tax, those teams that are already near or over it, they're going to be a little bit more tepid on signing Cody Bellinger. But teams that maybe need to spend a little bit more have the opportunity to sign him, and they could still pay. So here's the balance. Teams that are small market still need to be paying more money. They should be. They can't sit on their hands. They can't sit on and collect all this revenue. That's another thing that needs to change, by the way. So a team like, I don't know, let me say the A's, just because we know how the A's operate. Teams like the A's should be spending more money and should be getting those Cody Bellingers instead of Cody Bellinger just automatically being sent to a super team.
Yeah,
I think is what the solution here is. And so, Bellinger still gets paid, but it's not by a team that already has Ohtani and Freeman and Betts. And right? I think that's what I'm trying to get at is
I'm tracking. Mm-hmm.
Let's get these guys paid, but not by all of the same 3-4 suspects like the Mets and the Yankees and the Dodgers, right?
Yeah, because then if they're a free agent and the teams that are close to the luxury tax or at the luxury tax, the penalties are stiff, then that means that it provides an opportunity for some of the smaller market teams to go and get a Cody Bellinger.
Yeah.
Maybe a salary floor actually
Yeah.
incentivizes that instead of a salary cap, because I want these guys to make all the money that they can make. Like
They deserve.
Because I want to make all the money I can make, and I know you do, and I know everydayers do, right? And so that's the thing. Like maybe a salary cap isn't great, but a salary floor means, hey, we have to at least spend this much. And if to get there, we have to go and get a Cody Bellinger. It might actually benefit a team because he's going to come and he's going to play well.
So again, I think just kind of reiterating this conversation is there's a lot of things that can change, and we don't have to go right to salary cap and preventing players from getting paid the money that they deserve. Now, I know it's buku bucks, but the truth is that's where the market's gone. It's not their fault that the market went there. But the truth is like, let these guys get paid. I know there's a certain limit where it's like, how much money do you need? But the fact is, this is just what baseball is now. And I think baseball's rules that they put in 22 years ago need to catch up to where baseball and spending is right now.
The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And getting tickets for that, it's going to be difficult. But it won't be if you have the Game Time app, because they're coming in clutch, giving you a real advantage when it comes to snagging your seats. With Game Time, you can track prices as they drop or rise, depending on what time it might be, get alerts when the gates open, and buy tickets the moments that they hit the app. Plus, puts power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup a realistic possibility instead of completely impossible for you. When you pull up the app, the layout makes it so simple to scroll through the matchups and compare seats. You can pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. And they have this feature where you can see where you're sitting, and they call it the pitch. That's the field. You can see where you're sitting compared to where the pitch is, so you can see what your view is going to be like before you even buy. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets. Every match, concert, and even event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app right now, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Again, promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time.
Now, here's where things get a little juicy, Mike. This is the part that actually relates back to our favorite team, the Angels. The article and the reaction it created, this idea that like we're just a bunch of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed fans that are like,
hey, we're glad to be here.
Yeah, I got a free hat, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they were talking about the fact that we're going to be on the side of ownership because they're trying to manipulate us into pushing a narrative on our social platforms. Look, if that were the case and that we would be on the side of ownership, and that how they spend money, the Angels would be a dynasty in baseball. and the truth is like being on the fan council as Angels fans puts us in a very unique position, because the narrative is, well, the Angels spend. Harold Reynolds said it the other day on MLB Network, but the truth is the Angels might be top 10 in spending over the years, but they're also top 10 in misery. And simply,
you need to hashtag that.
Yeah. Top 10 in spending, top 10 in misery. And the truth is simply spending doesn't win you games, or even guarantee you a championship. Smart spending does. And the teams that have spent money, like the Dodgers and the Mets, they also have really good systems in place. Great drafting, great scouting, player development, coaching staff, minor leagues. They spare no expense, and not just on the major league roster. But let's remember, one of those teams won the World Series, the Dodgers.
Mm-hmm.
The other team didn't make the playoffs, the Mets, and they kind of had a collapse toward the end of the season. And honestly, that's what makes baseball such a unique sport. The Diamondbacks can destroy the Dodgers on their way to facing the Rangers in the 2023 World Series. Diamondbacks, nobody pegged them to make the World Series, let alone the playoffs in 2023. But Mike, take us back to some smart spending.
Yeah. A few weeks ago, we shared a breakdown of payroll and what percentage went to a certain number of players. For the Angels, for our favorite team, 46% of the Angels' payroll went to 3 players: Trout, Rendon, Kikuchi. They spent $206 million on payroll last season. 15% of the payroll was on each of those players. Now, how does that compare to how other teams operate? Well, let's look at like a large market team like the Chicago Cubs, 206 million, kind of around the same spot we were as the Angels. 41% of the payroll went to 4 players, less percentage than the Angels, 1 more player, about 10% of the payroll to each of those players. And then what about a team like that went over the luxury tax? It's a large market team like the Yankees, $295+ million. 55% of the payroll went to 5 players, more percentage, but more players, 11% to each of those players. And then let's give another luxury tax team, Blue Jays, $280 million. 57% of the payroll went to 5 players, 11.4% to each player. And then, of course, the Padres are a spending team, but they're in the 28th ranked market. They had a payroll of $211 million. 40% of the payroll went to 4 players, 10% on each player.
The Angels are the only team from that group who spent more than 40% on 3 players, while everyone else who went above 40% spread that at least on 4 players or more. Another way to say that is the Angels spent more on 3 players relative to their payroll, while other teams kind of spread the wealth and used their payroll to have more impact players. One of the players the Angels spent on, Mike, was Rendon, and he didn't even play in 2025. So again, Trout, Kikuchi, and Rendon take up 46% of the payroll. Rendon didn't even play.
Yeah.
So going back to the original headline from The Athletic, that implies that MLB is trying to get us on the side of ownership. You know we aren't. You know that everydayers know that we are on the side of ownership, and we have the unique perspective of being a fan of the team that is run by Arte Moreno, don't we?
Yeah, and that gives us good perspective because we're watching this team every single day. And it's one of the reasons why we got invited, because we're watching this team every single day. We're doing content 5 days a week, and we're paying attention to our favorite team. And they're a spending team, but they're not spending wisely.
No.
And according to the stats, if MLB was trying to get us on their side, then spending teams actually win. That's not the case for the Angels. So we were able to push back, bring up questions. And so ultimately, I feel like we represented the fans well and the everydayers well. And I also feel like other fans on that fan council represented their teams well and asked really good questions. And there were some really good discussions where the question was asked, and then those that were on the MLB council like paused and said, I think maybe you're better to answer this than I am. And tell us about the numbers. And then they would open up, they'd have books in front of them. They would have information in front of them. I felt like they treated us with a great genuineness, great integrity, and just surprised, but not surprised by the clickbait article.
Yeah. And to say that they jumped right to trying to sell us on the ownership side of things, it's just not true.
Yeah. And it's not like they lulled us into, well, let's reel them in and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
We asked for it.
Yeah.
When they talked about it in November, it's because we asked for it.
Yeah.
We wanted to talk about the numbers and how does that compare. And so they did what we asked for.
Yeah. And they didn't bring up CBA. They didn't bring up solutions to the CBA. They didn't bring up the lockout. It all came from us. And I'll say, I have been very pleased with how fans have driven the conversations wherever they go. And if somebody's trying to imply that there's some sort of agenda behind this thing, look, they have done a great job of just trying to find MLB influencers. And it's not, I saw people saying, well, is it just Twitter fans? It's not just Twitter fans.
No.
Number one, baseball is huge on Twitter. But number two, it's not just Twitter followings. It's people from all different walks of life and making different kinds of content. We're podcasters. The Rockies gal, she does a lot of TikTok stuff on the Rockies. She loves the Rockies, right? Yep. And she's of the opinion that there should be a salary cap, but that's her opinion because she's in a division with the Dodgers and is an NL West rival and a fan of a team that is in that same division. So I get it. It's not that everybody has the same perspective, but to suggest that MLB was pushing an agenda to make us their little soldiers, that feels gross. And I didn't appreciate the conclusions that came from that. And honestly, for fans to respond to that article and feel that same way. I don't blame them, because that's kind of how the whole conversation was framed. But the truth is, and we're just here to tell you on our platform, that just really isn't the case, and that's not how we've been treated whatsoever.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Be sure to like and subscribe while you're here. It's the best way to stay updated on all things Angels throughout the offseason.
All right, you heard our side of things, and we'd love to hear from you. Get in the comments section for today's show on YouTube, whether you're watching or listening. Mike, winter meetings starts this weekend. What do we got on deck for Monday's show?
Well, we're going to share all the breaking news, and maybe some of the breaking news will be that Rendon has decided to retire, and the Angels have decided to negotiate out of that contract in some way or pay him out, whatever might be the case. Deferral, whatever might be the case, right? But we're going to have all the breaking news for you, so make sure that you're subscribed, that you're tuned in, that you're locked on with Locked On Angels.
Hey, all right, friends. We hope you'll come back and join us on Monday. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
All right, all you sickos who love this Angels team and all the everydayers who love to watch and listen, we'll see you back here on Monday.
You said Buku Bucks. I've always wondered, where'd Buku come from?
Buku? It's probably from being manipulated by MLB. That's what happened.